They tried for a coup. Didn't work out so well. And I didn't need a gun for that one, did I? Corruption at the highest level, a disgrace. Spying, surveillance, trying for an overthrow. And we caught him. We caught him.
I mean, I just got to say, everything you said there was a lie.
I know, the whole speech.
An overthrow was a lie. That's the sort of inflammatory rhetoric that we've been talking about, where the president is trying to move people to violence. An overthrow, that's a lie. It was, Donald, it was your own Justice Department that looked at what you did.
Want.
Donald, it was your own Attorney General who, by the way, you told me time and time again was the smartest guy you ever had met that was in government. You said that Jeff Sessions was the smartest guy in government, and that he would be your Attorney General, or if he wanted to be Secretary of State, you'd name him Secretary of State, that he was the best and the brightest that Washington had to offer. You made him your Attorney General, and then he recused himself, because any lawyer in that position would recuse themselves. Then you took one step after another step after another step that required your Justice Department to appoint Robert Mueller. Robert Mueller conducted an investigation that you said was an honorable investigation. So I'm not really confused. I know you're trying to stir up hate and maybe even violence, because your words, they certainly go on the border an awful lot. But a coup, that's just a lie. You know it's a lie. You know it's irresponsible. You know it's as irresponsible as when you say enemy of the people. That's kind of like when you talked about a Second Amendment solution to stopping Hillary Clinton from appointing federal judges that people didn't like. Second Amendment solution, the killing of Hillary Clinton. We are so far beyond dog whistles here, Donald. We are so far beyond dog whistles. The blood that is spilled is on your hands, from white nationalists, from people that listen to that sort of rhetoric. Any violence to journalists, enemy of the people. The kill list? Yes, let's go back to the kill list. Your Justice Department let somebody that has a manifesto inspired by white nationalist killers, including a guy that slaughtered over 68 children. Your Attorney General and you let that person walk? No, we are so past dog whistles now, Donald. You are just inciting violence. It's just obvious. And that speech was every bit as obvious as those, quote, Second Amendment solutions that you talked about in the killing of Hillary Clinton to stop her from ever being able to appoint federal judges. And yes, we called it out then. I wrote an op-ed in the Washington Post talking about how horrific and how disqualifying it was. We're calling it out now. You are unfit to be president of the United States. But you can do something about that. You can call out white nationalism. You can call out political violence. You can tell people to hold back. You can pull yourself back. You can restrain before there is more bloodshed. Because let me tell you, the synagogue shootings are not going to stop until you call out white nationalism by its name and allow the federal government to actually see white nationalism as a threat. And that's every bit as disturbing to us Americans as it was to you that Barack Obama wouldn't call Islamic radicalism by its name. They are both threats to America, and we need a president who recognizes that. Why don't you be that president? Okay. Why don't you try? You can do it. Try to do it. For the sake of your country, for the sake of Jews that keep getting gunned down, and for the sake of others who are put in danger by your words.
So what we came in with was President Trump on Friday speaking to the annual National Rifle Association convention. Meanwhile, the NRA is facing a major shakeup after its current president, Oliver North, announced he would be stepping down and not return for a second term. It comes amid a bitter power struggle inside the gun rights organization, where North reportedly attempted to oust Wayne LaPierre, the group's longtime chief executive. Quoting here from the New York Times, their standoff began on Wednesday when Mr. North urged Mr. LaPierre to resign. On Thursday, Mr. LaPierre sent a letter to the board in which he accused Mr. North of threatening to release damaging information about him and other executives if he refused to step down. According to the Washington Post, LaPierre claimed North was pressuring him to resign over alleged financial transgressions. All this as New York's Attorney General has opened an investigation into the NRA's tax-exempt status. Meanwhile, a recent joint investigation by The Trace, a nonprofit news organization covering guns in America, and The New Yorker exposed hundreds of millions of dollars in questionable payments to NRA executives, contractors, and vendors. Quote, a small group has extracted hundreds of millions of dollars from the nonprofit's budget through gratuitous payments, sweetheart deals, and opaque financial agreements. Memos created by a senior NRA employee describe a workplace distinguished by secrecy, self-dealing, and greed, whose leaders have encouraged disastrous business ventures and questionable partnerships and have marginalized those who object.
Jonathan LaPierre,
Wow.
Until this dust-up between Oliver North and Wayne LaPierre, I had no idea the degree of the financial mismanagement that had been going on inside the NRA
Reportedly.
for a long time. Reportedly, but the details are shocking as you dig in, and they are so shocking, Jonathan, that when they become public, I suspect no one will be more angered by it than the rank-and-file members of the NRA, because it looks like their money has been misused and some say stolen. Again, in the range of tens of millions of dollars.
I think that's right. It's an organization with clear financial trouble, and one that's also sort of losing seemingly some clout, which is surprising considering how influential it was in 2016 and how eager Donald Trump was to wrap his arms around it. He was perhaps our most pro-NRA candidate we've ever seen from the Republican Party, and really, we every time and time again talked them up. He's appeared at their convention several times. In fact, according to our reporting, part of why he went this week was to kind of prop them up to that speech. He wanted to sort of say thank you for what they have done for him. But I also wanted to go back to what you opened this segment with about his rhetoric. He has expressed condolences to what happened at the synagogue in California a few times, including again on Twitter just this morning. But on Saturday, just hours after this shooting, he appeared at a rally in Wisconsin, which was meant as counter-programming to the White House Correspondents' Dinner. And the White House Correspondents' Dinner, we all can have feelings about that. But what happened there that night, and I was in the room, was a moment of silence for the shooting, but also a real expression of support for the First Amendment and for journalists around the world who have been threatened, who have been attacked, who have been killed. That same night, as the president, after he did, again, acknowledge, he gave his condolences to what happened in San Diego, he referred to the media as sick people. And he continued bashing the press. You know, he cheered as there was a derogatory chant that went up about another cable network. That, again, he tries to have it both ways, it seems, where he wants to occasionally hit the notes of the president, who's the comforter in chief, but at the same time stir up the divisions that so often lead to violence and one fears could inspire another attack before too long.
Well, again, he dehumanizes his political opponents, calls them scum, as he did the other night, calls them enemy of the people, as he does all the time, calls them sick, and the consequences of that, the results of that, obviously, we see unfortunately play out in the headlines. And Walter, let's go back to the NRA for one moment. Jonathan's right. The NRA is in retreat. In 2018, they were outspent. It appears that they're running short on money. They keep draining dues from their members. They keep raising dues. They keep having one failed business venture after another that insiders make tens of millions of dollars on. This looks like an organization whose leadership has totally built their rank and file. It does remind me an awful lot of the PTL Club with Jim and Tammy Faye Baker back in the 70s and 80s, which I know very well because my grandmother would always write checks to the PTL Club. And we knew when that was going on that it was a good cause. We Southern Baptists believe that, you know, supporting Ministry of Jesus, a bad cause because of the people who were running that ministry. It looks that way right now with the NRA. They may have to clean house.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I'm watching that Wayne LaPierre, Oliver North split and all the scum that's coming up from the pond there because of it, sort of reminds me of the Iran-Iraq war, for those of us here in Louisiana, this past Super Bowl, which is you find yourself rooting against both sides, you know, against Ollie North and Wayne LaPierre, because they've both taken the organization in that direction. And when I was growing up down here, you know, I got my NRA Marksman Award, but also my NRA Gun Safety badge or whatever you got. And that's what the NRA was back then. It was in favor of both teaching kids how to use guns properly, but also teaching about gun safety. And how an organization could have gotten so off track is not just the finances and the scandal, as horrible as that is, and the waste of members' money, as horrible as that is. I think it's really a 20, 30-year process where a great organization has become a force that's not what it was intended to be.
Well, and of course, Mika, this all started after Ruby Ridge, when Wayne LaPierre and the NRA referred to law enforcement officers as jackbooted thugs. It was the first time that that organization moved from an organization that was not controversial at all, at least where I grew up, because so many people I knew were members of the NRA, and so many people I knew took their kids out hunting all the time. But at that point, it started to become politicized. And, Clint, there really started to become an anti-government sort of strain to the NRA. And they began running ads that talk about inciting violence. The NRA TV began running ads, which one of the articles suggests turned off some of the members because, again, it moved away from guns and started actually advocating extraordinarily extremist views that had nothing to do with protecting Second Amendment rights.
That's right, Joe. I mean, it got to such an extreme in some of those videos that it was playing into the divisiveness in this country. You would see sometimes these videos when you watch in the social media discussions, talks of Second Civil War. You know, these conversations are getting lumped into those communities.
And Clint, let me they talked about Mika and me, and Dana Lausch turned over an hourglass and said, "Your time is running out." And it inspired violence against the New York Times. It inspired violence against other members of the media. It was extraordinarily extreme. And there are a lot of NRA members that said, wait a second, I just want you to protect my Second Amendment rights. I don't want you to threaten to kill news hosts or get a sledgehammer and you know, take it to news hosts' heads, as, again, these ads did.
Yeah, and as Walter talked about, that my understanding from, I grew up in Missouri, the NRA was about safety, it was about teaching people about weapons. So we've gone from safety to almost inciting divides in this country, putting people on the attack.
Not almost. They are inciting divides, and you look at those ads, it certainly looks like they're inciting violence as well.
Yeah, and what was remarkable about this is President Trump was there speaking at that conference, and on the same day, we saw Maria Butina and the Russia case, right? Why did she pick the NRA? It was an organization that was secretive, that had sort of an anti-government feel, that was divisive, that you could plow into as long as you coughed up cash. I mean, this was an influence vector just waiting to happen. And, you know, it's just fascinating when we look at it. All three of those things have really come together together just over the past day. You got President Trump at the rally. We have Russia hoax talk. We have someone being charged and sentenced now for trying to influence on behalf of Russia. And now we have corruption talk again. This is a golden triangle of influence, foreign influence, and it's really just divisive to this country.
Well, here's hoping, Mika, that the NRA becomes what it once was, and that is an organization that teaches gun safety and that also does protect Second Amendment rights and rational gun laws and rational gun regulations to protect not only gun owners, but other Americans.
Walter Isaacson, thank you very much for being on this morning.
Thanks for
Up
having
next,
me. Appreciate it.
On a weekend where the Avengers was the talk of the superhero world, the world of politics saw a super group of sorts come together. The leaders and founders of 3 major progressive organizations joined forces, and then they join us next to explain what their new group, Supermajority, is all about.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.